Alright guys, I'm finally back after Hurricane Milton. And I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all of you who have mentioned that you will keep me in your thoughts and your prayers, my family and I. And we're very much grateful for that. And if you had seen my last video, you'll know that I was talking about how Hurricane Milton was on the cusp of making landfall in Florida the evening of that video. And we'd already experienced Hurricane Helene just a week or two prior to that. While it did not affect us in our local area that much, it did affect Florida disastrously. And not only Florida, but as that hurricane moved northeast, it continued to devastate different regions like North Carolina, I guess even some places in Tennessee, in Georgia, and I don't really know all the places, but I've seen some of the videos, and it's just cataclysmic. So, you know, it's not very often you get two hurricanes back to back like that, and it's a pretty scary, very ominous thing to consider. And we don't get a choice in it. Nobody gets a vote, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is with weather patterns like that. And you just kind of hope for the best and pray that you'll come out of it unscathed at the best and alive at the worst. So I just want to let you guys know right up front that my family and I are okay. We did quite well, at least in our community. And a large part of that is due to the fact that we don't really have any trees in our neighborhood because we're a new development. And so they just haven't been planted and grown yet. So that consequence, I should say, wasn't even a possibility. That doesn't mean that we couldn't have been infected in big ways, in different ways. And we were, but we're fine. Our family's fine. No damage to our house. Nothing we have to make a claim on. No one's hospitalized. No one had to be rescued. As you probably heard, many people were. It was mandated that you had to evacuate the whole West Coast over there. It seemed like the whole West Coast. People were very concerned. I know a few people who did not leave, and they're still devastated. This is October 29th. This is October 29th when I'm making this video, and still, some people don't have power. Some people still don't have their homes back to normal yet. And I'll tell you why here in just a few moments. But Milton did affect us in a very, very big way. And we just hope that we're done for... Give us a couple of years, please. So, anyway, that's that. And so we're just thankful for that. So we stayed glued to our television, or at least I did. My family distracted themselves with movies and whatnot, but I stayed glued to the television. I was watching YouTube. I was watching Ryan Hall, y'all. Really good channel. I don't know if he's a bona fide meteorologist or if he's just deeply interested in it. I have a feeling he actually is a meteorologist. I really liked his reporting because he seemed even more current than our local news stations were. He could see things taking shape as they were developing, if that makes any sense. So I was watching him quite a bit. So we waited, or at least I waited by the TV with bated breath to find out what my next step was going to need to be. And as Milton got closer, the outer bands were affecting the east coast of Florida more than they were affecting us. And they were being pummeled by hurricanes in Vero Beach and Point Siena. And I felt very bad for those people because it just came out of nowhere. So there's a lot of devastation over there. But as Milton approached closer and closer to the Sarasota area, which is where I guess it made landfall, we were just hoping that they wouldn't get more flooding, which seemed a nigh impossibility because Helene had just slammed like St. Petersburg, Treasure Island, Anna Maria Island already, and destroyed so much of the area. And of course, 2 years prior to this, Hurricane Ian hit and took out Fort Myers. And Fort Myers has still been trying to recover from that all this time. And I've been wanting to get down there and take a look at it with a camera, but I didn't want to be like everybody else and kind of get in the way and look like I'm doing some kind of a power grab for YouTube. But nevertheless, these things are on everybody's mind. Like, what is next? Are we going to be able to recover from this? And we'd already seen the lack of help that North Carolina was getting, of course, after Helene, and that's troublesome. So I sat there and waited and watched the reports on YouTube, and then I can't remember what time Milton made landfall. You're sitting there, basically, metaphorically, with your seatbelt on, and we lost power. We lost power at 8:19 p.m., which was early compared to a lot of people. And the fireworks that were taking place as you look out the back window with the transformers blowing, the sky was filling with pink and green and blue, and it was just going on for so long. And you're out of power. You think, well, that's not going to happen anymore because it's done. That part of it's done. No, it still keep happening. Just keep on happening, and it's quite a show. And we heard that everywhere we went. Like, you see, I work for a local utility company that provides the power and water services locally, and so I heard the same story from so many people as we went back out to attempt to restore service. And so one of the things I am grateful for is that this time, after the hurricane blew through, the temperatures lowered. Usually it's sweltering hot in Florida at night, even after the hurricane, and you can't hardly sleep. But we opened up the windows, and I did try to lower the temperature in my house as much as I could all during the day to hopefully preserve some of the temperature. I'll never do that again. It was absolutely worthless. It didn't pay off. And so that's just a little side note, but the temperatures were lower outside, so it did make it a little bit nicer. It was a little bit easier to bear. And then you're left wondering, how long is it going to take to get back on? Now, personally, we were without power for 2.5 days. We didn't, like I said, I don't know if I said it already or not, but we, in our family, we didn't sustain any damage at our house. But I didn't know that right away, because when I left for work, I got up at 5 o'clock the next morning with just a couple of hours of sleep, and I had no idea if my house had sustained any damage or not. You just couldn't tell, because the whole area was blacked out, completely blacked out, and you just couldn't see anything. I mean, you could get a flashlight and look, but I had to report to work, and I thought, I'll deal with this later. As it turns out, we didn't have anything happen, so we're good. And I start heading to work, and I'm going up 98 South, and all these lights are on both sides of the road, and I thought, maybe this is a good sign. Maybe there isn't that many people that lost power. No, I mean, it seems like an impossibility, and it is. I mean, if you still have power after a hurricane like this, it's a freaking miracle. And miracles did abound in some places, I guess, not in our neighborhood. But I was going down 98 South. I saw lights on both sides of the road, and so I thought this might be a good sign. Turns out we had 85,000 customers without power. That's roughly about 3/4 of our customers, I'm guessing, something like that. So anyway, that's a lot of people, and I guess statewide it was more like, I would think it was over 1 million, maybe a couple million, I don't know. There's a lot of people. And with the storm came, just all this rain. And luckily we didn't get flooded, but much of Lakeland did get flooded. And I went to some places when I reported to work and went out on the job. I went to a lot of places where the high water mark at some of the houses were up to our knees. A police officer told me that they had to go rescue people from their homes in mobile home parks where the water was up to their chest, because the park sat down in like a bowl. Here in Lakeland, we've never experienced this. It's rather odd. It's just very, very different than something we didn't. I don't think we anticipated it. But anyway, so yeah, they had to rescue people from their homes. The cops also told me they spent a lot of time breaking up fights at gas stations because there was a run on gas before and after the hurricane. Of course, that's always the case. There's cars, more than a mile long in a lot of these places, just waiting to get gas, and a lot of times they just run out. You hear about people waiting in line for 3 hours. They see the person in front of them get gas, and then they pull up to the pump, and there's none left. And I guess there was just so many fights that ensued because people being pigs and stuff like that. But anyway, so I'm headed to work. I'm going down 90 South. I see these lights on. I think it's a good sign. I see racetrack is open, and I'm like, oh, good. I don't normally eat breakfast. I'm not a person who eats breakfast very often, hardly ever. And I thought, well, I'm going to eat today. I'm going to fuel up because I knew I was going to be working 16-hour days, at least for a week. I wasn't sure who I was going to be buddied up with and where I was going to be, when I was going to get a chance to eat. So I said, I'm going to get some food while I can. Well, racetrack, it looked open. I thought, so I went inside. And I went over to the soft drink machine, and it said it was not working. So I went over to the cooler, grabbed a bottle of Dr. Pepper, and I thought I'll grab a package of donuts and a real healthy breakfast. I still eat like I'm a kid. And I go to the register, and there's just two men standing up there, older than me. One taps the other, and he points in my direction and says, "Ask him, he would know." Like, well, why would they think I would know anything? And I said, "What's going on?" He says, "Well, there's nobody here." I go, "What do you mean there's nobody here?" He says, "Well, we've been calling for an employee to help us, and no one's here." Well, I looked at the cash registers, and they're all bagged up. Like, you can tell they were shut down to not be open. Like, why the store was open and unlocked, I have no idea. And I don't know if these men were looking for permission to take things free of charge, or I don't know what they were doing, but why would you have to ask me that? So I thought to myself, well, man, there might be somebody laying on the floor in the back. This might be a Dateline episode in the making, or there might be someone locked in the freezer. So I walk to the back. I look in the freezers. I look everywhere. Nobody. The back door was wide open. Wind was blowing through. I walked outside. I walked around the building. Nobody. The place hadn't even been ransacked yet. So my guess is that whoever vacated this establishment did so shortly before I arrived, because it was still in order. I don't know what became of that. I didn't bother to notify anybody because I needed to get to work, and I knew the cops. I could tell from what I saw on the road, the cops were already busy enough as it was. And I don't know. I figured I'll let that sleeping dog lie. But so I got to work, and tried to find out what the lowdown was on where we were going to be, and who we were going to be working with, and what we were going to be doing. And so then we went out, and that's when you see all these trees down, these lines down, these poles down, and all the flooding. And I really, honestly, I think Hurricane Ian hit us worse in some ways than Milton did. Honestly. Hi. That's a pretty dog. Well, anyway, but I've never experienced, we've gone through a lot of hurricanes, and I've never seen one where we had this kind of flooding. It was something we totally did not expect. Now, right down the road from where I live, and I've been living in this area for a long time, many, many years, several decades actually, in this particular area. And there's a house that is behind a big privacy fence on 548. Used to belong to George Jones, the country music legend. This is the house he lived in when he was married to Tammy Wynette. And it's like a I think it's a 2-story. I don't know if you'd call it a mansion or not, but it's a big home, and it's got a guitar-shaped pool. And I've been on the property before because of work. I didn't think the pool looked like that much of a guitar, but I could see why they would say that. But I thought if you really wanted to make it more guitar-like, you could have. But nevertheless, that property, right next to that property, there's another piece of property that's rather large, and it sits down a little bit, kind of like in a bowl itself. And there's a 2 or 3 story, really big house, even bigger than the old George Jones house, sitting way back off in the distance. And that was flooded. That whole place, it's just a lake now, and it goes way, way, way back. That whole place is nothing but a lake now. The water is all the way up to the windows, and it must the ground must recede further as you go farther back, because there was a garage or a shed or something way off in the distance. It looked like a ski ramp, because the water was all the way up to the roof. And every time I drive by there, it doesn't look like the water's gone down very much, and I just don't see these people getting back into their home anytime soon. I mean, anytime soon. The house that they had, there's another house on that property, a little bit closer to the road. The water is even higher on that. And I'll try to provide video and some kind of footage, some kind of pictures for that on here right now. But yeah, another thing I saw while I'm still thinking about it is I saw a dead gator on the side of the road as I was going into work. He was pretty ripe. Somebody must have hit him and pulled him off to the side. And so yeah, here's the picture of that. And then in another place, we saw maybe a 3-foot baby gator. I don't know how long he was. I'm not really a good judge of that, but he must have he must have come from the lake that was real close to this home, and he was up in the driveway, and it looked like he was trying to find his way back to the lake and having a hard time with it. I was not going to help him. I'm not going to help him. I don't help gators, man. They think they own the world down here. It's like mini Australia. And for those of you that don't know, they're everywhere. Absolutely everywhere down here. I mean, they'll even climb chain link fences to get in your pool or to get to your dog. Sometimes you'll hear a knocking on your door. Now, it didn't happen to me, but you hear about these incidences where somebody hears a knocking at the door, they go with the door, there's a gator on the outside, or there's one underneath their vehicle and they go out to work in the morning. I mean, I see them in places that just are some of the craziest places, man. You just never know when you're going to come across one. I saw one up here, a baby one, by this bridge when I was up here earlier this morning. Who knows if we're going to see another one or not? But one of the things that surprised me with all the flooding we had in Lakeland, that we didn't see more alligators just everywhere. That kind of shocked me. Or even snakes. Didn't see a lot of snakes either. And I fully expected that. So I don't know where they went. And I don't see any at the moment. Yeah, I don't know where they went. But they took cover somewhere else and stayed hidden for a while. But yeah, whole roads were completely taken out, washed out. We saw water rise in places I just didn't think it could. I really didn't think it could. It was incredible. And so, water damage is pretty bad. It takes a while to recover from that. Although there's so much more work. So we went out and we tried to restore power to these people. I show up on the sites, and just to kind of give you a view of what was like, it's always been like for us in the past, is working for a utility company, is you go out to these places and people have always been very angry, very upset, very impatient, and they think, some of these people act like all you have to do is flip a switch. Well, the people across the street have power. Why don't we? They don't. And you try to explain to them, but you can only explain so much and do your job at the same time. But people, I've actually lost friends over social media, as shallow as that sounds. I've actually lost friends over social media over the way they talked about our company after the hurricane, during the recovery phase, because they were so entitled, and didn't matter what you said to them. They acted like little children about it. So I just would delete them. I'd get rid of them, and I can't stand. And to this day, whenever I see them, I have some kind of resentment for them, because it just revealed to me so much about them. And I say all that to say this, that this time around, I have to applaud the people of Lakeland. Now, other crew members in other places of Lakeland might have different stories to tell, but I will tell you from my experience this time around with Milton, that so many of our citizens here were so kind and so patient and so understanding. It kind of took all of us back, because none of us were expecting it. And I don't know if maybe it's the cooler temperatures that made it easier for people to bear, or if it was something else. I know, people have learned from previous hurricanes that all the whining, all the fussing doesn't work. I'm sure it did happen in some places, but we didn't have, I don't know that we had the same kind of contact with our customers this time we've had in the past, and I was really, really grateful for that. So I think that the expressed resilience by our customers deserves an applause. I really had a lot of respect for when I would show up at these houses where people have been still off for 7 days. And they're like, "Oh, I understand. You're doing what you can. It's okay. Like they were trying to tell us it was going to be all right. We're trying to tell them it's going to be. We're doing the best we can. We're going to get you on as soon as possible, but it's going to take some time. And I even had one guy tell me, he goes, I'm starting to get a little used to the cold showers. I think I'm starting to like them. I don't know what that says. So, people adapt after a while, but none of us really like change, especially if it's forced on us. But I thought our citizens handled it rather well. And I don't know about statewide. I don't know what other companies would tell you. I have no idea. But maybe a lot of us, our people, were just thankful that we were not experiencing what we saw in North Carolina to the degree that they were. I'm looking at the squirrel over here. Is he sleeping on the branch? I think he's sleeping. Look at this. I think I might have woke him up. Anyway, okay, getting back to the topic at hand. Yeah, even at this date right now, there are still some people off. But that's because perhaps we can't get to them, or the water has to recede, or something. And another thing, and that's at a very minimum. That's at a very minimum. Another thing I want to say too is, it's really impressive, and this happens every time. it still impresses me that all these crews from different cities and different states show up and help us out. I know it's all business, but I still really respect it and appreciate it. These guys show up from Tallahassee, from Jacksonville, from Tennessee, from Georgia, from I don't know where else. I mean, I even heard there were crews from like Maine or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but there were crews sent from all over the place to help us out, to restore power, which really facilitated some expediency. And of course, our crews do the same thing when we know a storm is headed somewhere else, that we show up likewise. But I don't know, it's something that's really interesting to behold. And I like seeing plans like that come together. And it's just I don't know. I just like to see all that come together like that. I'm not sure how to express myself when I'm talking about it like that, but maybe I ought to turn around. But anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about all this. Yeah, so anyway, we were without power for 2.5 days, got back on. We were fortunate. One thing I will tell you is that when you go through something like this, and I'm sure everyone watching this video has had something happen where they're at similar to this. When you go through something like this, you start appreciating normal life a little bit more, and hopefully every time you go through something like this, you build thicker skin, or you develop hopefully you develop thicker skin and become more resilient. So I think that's one of the takeaways here. I think we're all just very, very thankful that things are not worse than what they were. We all figure it's just a matter of time before our number comes up. Whatever that means, whatever that looks like, we all figure it's just a matter of time. And you hope that you can pay it forward enough that when your turn does come up, that people will come to your aid. And I think they will. You know, I think Florida citizens are starting to get this thing figured out, as many times we've been through this. But you know, people could say to us, I guess, well, why would you live in Florida with the hurricanes that happen as often as they do? Well, I guess I could leave for someplace else that doesn't suffer weather patterns like this, but I would just be trading it for something else. Where you live might be a little more prone to flooding all the time, or you might have a repeated cycle of blizzards that keep you from getting out and doing what you need to do during certain months. Some people out west have earthquakes, and certain parts of the world are more prone to tsunamis. I remember back in 1980 when Mount St. Helens erupted, and that was a big deal. I lived in Indiana, of course. I lived in Indiana. I remember the skies going gray for a while, for a good while, and that was a big deal. But I mean, shoot, I could swap it for volcanoes, although those don't really happen that often. Maybe my chances would be greater. That might be a possibility. But I've lived in places where tornadoes were a very real possibility a great deal of the time. In fact, when I was little, I was 4 years old, living in Monticello, Indiana, and there was a big super tornado breakout, and all these tornadoes kind of came together at the same time and obliterated sections of the Midwest, or I guess you would call it that. Parts of Indiana just completely obliterated them, Kentucky and Illinois and stuff like that. They didn't even think they were going to be able to rebuild Monticello. But I vividly remember those tornadoes happening. I remember a lot of tornadoes happening, but that one in particular. And the pressure was so great that my 1-year-old brother actually lost a lot of his hearing during those tornadoes. So, yeah, I mean, all you do is you trade one thing for another, basically. Out west, you're prone to forest fires, right? I wouldn't want that. I'd rather deal with the possibility of a hurricane than some of these forest fires. You should see how long those go on. But I love Lakeland. I can't imagine ever leaving for a long time. Maybe someday I probably will, but not for a while. I do like living here. If you ever make it to Central Florida, you ought to visit Lakeland. It's a beautiful town. You know, everything has their trade-offs. But yeah, that's about all I want to tell you about it. I feel like there's probably something I'm gonna remember later that I wish I would have mentioned. And yeah, I will say the one thing I did enjoy about all of this is that all of us guys would get together in the morning, eat breakfast, and then in the evening eat dinner together after a very, very, very long day. And of course, ever since that whole thing went down a couple years ago, where everybody had to wear a mask, we don't see each other that often. We don't have meetings that often anymore. We kind of adapted to that. So I don't get a chance to see my coworkers very often. Not like that, not in groups like that. So we get together, we cut up. We had a blast, man. But that was one of the positive things I really liked about all this is getting together and just yucking it up. What else was there that I could appreciate? I wanted to take a lot of pictures. I did want to take a lot of pictures for you guys and show them to you, but I just wasn't in a position to be able to do that. I would still, that hawk over there, he just dipped in the water and got a fish. He's coming this way. Look at him. Yeah, there he goes. Anyway, so yeah, I'm thankful that we didn't get the same kind of devastation we did with Ian, but the flooding, man, I hope that never happens again, because some of these places I saw, I don't know when the water's ever gonna go down, and I hope they get all the help that they need. I really do. So we're blessed, and I'm thankful, and it's a good day. It's absolutely beautiful out here. I'm glad life is at least somewhat back to normal for us. But there are some people that I think are still struggling, will be for a while. So, just remember them. If you want somebody to pray for, that's who you pray for. That's who you keep in mind. Maybe there's charities out there or things you can give to that would help them. I don't really know. But if you're in a good spot right now, just be thankful for what you have. And know that it's not always going to be that way. Enjoy the little things while you can, and sit and wait patiently when things aren't going so well, because it'll come back around. It'll come back around, whatever it is you're dealing with. But I guess one last thing I probably ought to mention. Is my beard. I forgot the obvious thing in this whole video, because you guys have seen me sort of shaven for a couple months, and so here I've got, I don't know, this is probably about 20 something day growth here. I'm getting ready to make a 10-day beard video, so this will get trimmed back some, and then I'm going to shave it off again, and then I'm going to start growing it back out. I might do the whole yeared thing once more, but differently. Because the last time I did a yeared, I did it from an already established beard. This time, I'm going to start with a completely shaven face. I don't know that I'm going to go for a yeared. I'm not making promises. Okay, I'm not making promises, but it's a thought that I have. So I'm just gonna, if I do, I'm gonna do it differently. So stay tuned for another video about the 10-day beard, and then I will shave it off again, and then we'll start all over. Because I really did enjoy that process of growing it out long, and I'm starting to miss it again. All right, guys, thanks for staying tuned in. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button. Can you believe I'm over 40,000 subscribers now? I'm very happy about that. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It would help me out. And watch a lot of my other videos. I've got a lot of other videos that you might be interested in. So anyway, All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there, and I will see you on the next one. Have a great day.